That's Just Bull episode number 9 here with Atlanta Braves great Steve Avery. How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
Good, man. First things first, are you happy with that Detroit Lions pick last night with the cornerback?
I was hoping they would trade out, but I didn't hate it. He's going to be a good player. So
You
losing
need,
Slay definitely left us with a hole there.
you need a corner, right?
Oh yeah. They traded Slay, so hopefully they can make a move. They got the third pick again tonight, and I'd like to probably see a DN, but never hate to see a running back either.
We were texting yesterday. We were going to do this yesterday, and I forgot that the draft was, and we haven't seen any live sports in what feels like a year. And when you said, "Hey, man, my kids want to watch it," I was like, "Oh, dude, I'm with you."
Yeah, I got two boys that are fanatics, and we sat and watched it last night, and I forgot that there's a reason I don't really watch it. It's kind of boring.
It is boring, man.
It was boring, but you got no other sports, so it's like, you know, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, I told you I'm a Titans fan so you and I are both are gluttons for punishment. Uh, I used to be an Oilers fan, and then Houston didn't have a team here for years, and so I followed all the players that I liked, and we went over to Tennessee, and they've been. When you're a Lions or a Titans fan, you're a true fan, man.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, thick and thin.
I think that's the thing about Detroit is we don't stray. I mean, most of the time we stick with our Tigers, Lions, and Pistons and deal with it. And this year they said Detroit was probably the worst city of all time as far as their sports teams. I mean, I think the Tigers had the number 1 pick, Lions had a number 3 pick, Pistons are at like 6 or 7 right now. I mean, it's just been a horrible year for us, but hopefully they can turn it around with some high picks.
Yeah, man, the Pistons they haven't been good since the early '90s.
Yeah, they've been struggling, but I don't watch a whole lot of sports, to be honest, even baseball. I watch a lot of football, so that's probably my main focus.
I'm the same way, man. I love baseball. It kind of goes through the veins here. You never kind of shake it. But if I'm watching live TV, I enjoy the playoffs of baseball because every pitch means so much. But it's by far the most exciting to watch for me too.
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoy the playoffs. I mean, obviously it's kicked up a little bit in intensity, and when you play 162 games, it's hard to really get too excited about one of those games. So I think
Yeah,
a best of 5 or a best of 7, it kicks it up a notch.
game 48 doesn't seem that important. It is, but it doesn't seem that.
Exactly. It ends up being important, but it's hard to keep that focus for that long.
Yes. How old are your boys?
I got 20. He just turned 25, and I got a 15-year-old, and he's going to be 16 next month.
So I got almost the same. I got a 23-year-old and a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Do they have any idea who you are other than dad? I mean, they obviously they know. They've seen photographs and they've talked to people. But you think they can wrap their head around what you experienced?
Actually, I was wrong. My oldest just turned 26. So he when I played with the Tigers in 2003, I would take him down there. We'd play wiffle ball games on the field with the kids, and let's see, he would have been 9 years old. So
Yeah.
well, that was a cool experience for me. Because I started young with my family and kind of finished early as a player because of arm trouble. So for me to get a chance to get him on the field was kind of cool for me. My younger one, with the way internet is now, he can watch games and stuff like that. So, and actually, I've been doing a little bit of that during the quarantine. Is just checking out stuff that I've never even looked at. I mean, just games from the playoffs back in the day, and I never knew you could actually find pretty much every game you want to find on there.
Yeah, man, it's hard to get away from. I saw. I don't know if you. I don't know. Did you ever see the documentary of Derek Jeter? I forgot what it's called. Something about 3,000 or 3K or. Did you see that documentary?
I haven't seen that one now.
It's worth watching. It's one of the best documentaries I've watched, and he says something in it at the end, talking about kids. He says he was a pretty private person. He didn't really want to do the documentary. He decided to do it. The most compelling reason was he said he would get a little jealous when players could bring their kids into the locker room.
Absolutely, yeah.
And he didn't have any. He says, his career it's like it's a fairy tale. And then he says, I figured I'd do this because I'm not sure my kids wouldn't believe it. If they can't go back and watch it, they might not believe it. And it's true.
Yeah, well, he had a decent career to put on TV, I guess.
Yeah. I tell you one of my highlights. Of course, I was 7 years in the minor leagues, and I was a third baseman, and then they converted me to pitch, right? Because I threw hard across the diamond.
Right.
And they used to. I forgot, man. And sometimes you'd have a really good game, and the minor league radio guy, he'd come down there with a cassette tape, a recording of the game.
Right.
And he would give it to me, and I had a few, and I hadn't seen them, for years. And it was a few years ago. I was cleaning one out. And it was against the Yankees. And I called my boys over. I said, "Hey, come check out how Dad is. Let's see what it's all about." So I put it in, and it just so happens the second batter that I faced in the tape is Derek Jeter.
Right.
And I strike him out, and I said, "Hey, turn it off. That's all you're going to get right there.
Exactly.
It's just more of that."
That's awesome.
Yeah. No need to hear the rest of it.
Yeah. And I done the same kind of stuff when I was watching with the boys. Just early stuff where I faced Barry Bonds before he went to San Francisco.
Yeah.
And just a totally different hitter. But I didn't have much trouble with him back then. It was probably I pretty much just went right at him, didn't think about it. I was more worried about him getting a walk and a stolen base and hitting a home run, and then he ends up leading the world in home runs. So it was just kind of fun to watch how skinny he was and the difference.
Yeah.
Once in was.
I'm going to specifically talk to you about that in a minute. Let's go back to, you went to a school called John F. Kennedy High School in Michigan.
Yeah.
You're this lanky 6'4" kid. Obviously, you had to have electric stuff. You ended up getting drafted 3rd overall in the draft. Did you know that you were going to be that high of a pick? I mean, because I know that obviously the scouts had to be all over you. Did you have a good impression that this was going to happen?
Not really until after my junior year. I kind of grew quite a bit after my sophomore year, I think, and then developed quite a bit the next year. And then I always tell people, I mean, for the kids that are going through what they're going through now, missing their senior year, that would have really crushed me. I was probably, 10 to 15th round draft pick before my senior year. My senior year, I go out, I go 13-0. I strike out like almost 200 guys in 80 innings, 85 innings or something. And so that catapulted me up to the 3rd pick overall. So I feel bad for the seniors now that maybe, were late developers, have a chance to kind of go out and get drafted this year and didn't really get to show what they can do. I think those kids are really going to feel the effects of not only the draft that the MLB is talking about, just 5 rounds, but just missing their senior year and that chance to prove what they can do, I think.
Yeah, it's funny that go down to 5 rounds. I was a 7th round pick. I mean, the opportunity wouldn't even be there for me, with this new structure that's coming up.
Yeah, and when I first heard about it, I thought it's a huge advantage for the players because I didn't realize they put a cap on after 5 rounds. I guess it's $20,000 after 5 rounds. But if that wasn't the case, I mean, you got all those kids that didn't get drafted in 5 rounds would have been free agents, which would have been a huge advantage. But the way they're going to set it up, I don't think it's a very big advantage for them.
Man, that's too bad. You go in. What you had to have signed with the school already, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny now. I mean, kids are signing as freshmen, sophomores. I think I signed like late May to go to Stanford. Of my senior year. So we were already halfway through my senior season before I even picked the college, and that was just kind of spur of the moment. I called the coach, said, "Hey, I'm going to come out there." So I want to say that was maybe like the 3rd week of May. And then I got drafted in early June, so I really wasn't committed for very long.
Man, you guys, there's some correlation. Do you know? 2 days ago, I spoke with Jack McDowell was on here.
Yeah.
And you guys have some correlation. I mean, there's some similarities there. You ever talk to him?
Just on Facebook.
Yeah.
He played in the American League when I was in the National League for a long time, and I think when I went over, I don't remember where he was. I'm sure I've run into him a couple times on the field, but I always appreciate how good he was. I mean, did a lot with his stuff and had a great career.
I'll ask him the same thing. The second letter I ever got from any college in my high school days was from Stanford as well, and I ended up signing with Texas A&M, kind of having the hometown discount. But signing with Stanford is real, and so I'll ask you the same thing I asked him. Are you that smart, or were you tricking him?
I kind of looked at it as like leverage for the draft. I don't really know if I ever planned on going, but
Yeah.
it was a good fallback plan if the draft didn't work out. They kept telling me the school is tough to get into, but it's not tough once you're there. So I bought into their sales pitch and ended up signing with them.
Yeah, it would be hard if you're the third pick overall. You're not going to improve your draft status much, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of what once you're drafted. And back then the money was nothing compared to what it is now. I was probably at like 220 K, something like that, with some college. So I think 2 years later, maybe 3 years later, it jumped up a huge amount. And I kept thinking, man, I wish I was just drafted a couple years later than I was.
It's funny though, when you're 18, 220,000, it sounds like 20 billion, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. I went out and bought a Mustang GT, and that was about it. I mean, I wasn't a big spender anyway, but that was my big purchase. But that wasn't really even a big purchase back then.
Well, when you're the third pick in 88?
88.
When you're the third pick in 88, you get a Mustang GT. When you're the seventh round in 90, you get a little red Mazda truck. That's what I bought. That's the difference.
Yeah, exactly.
Mine was a Mazda B2200. That was my big sign. So you were being. I went and read some articles and stuff, and I think it's fair comparisons. They were comparing you to Steve Carlton and guys like that. The kind of the same frame, the same type of stuff. Obviously, you had a fastball at the high school level. You had to have that big bender, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Did you have the changeup? Were you effective with that at that early?
Yeah, I had all three pitches going in. I didn't use my changeup much in high school because it was mostly doing them a favor, but
yeah,
I had it if I needed it. And I also threw a knuckleball my first year in the minor leagues, and I went to instructional ball in the fall, and they're like, "No, you can scrap that one."
leave it alone, man.
Yeah, exactly.
That's for when things get bad.
Right. And it was a hard knuckleball, kind of like almost like a split, but they didn't really care for it.
Yeah, I started trying to throw a split. When I could see my days were being numbered.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you start trying to add to your repertoire, but it's never really good.
Yeah, I never could throw it.
You get drafted. You go to the Appalachian League, and for people who don't know, it's a short season low A ball, and it's for guys who are drafted. And the Appy League's more for the high school kids, right? It's a younger age,
right?
And you go there, and it's not close. You 7-1 with a 1.5,
right?
And so
you might have in front, but I don't know how many complete games. But like almost every game was a complete game back then too.
So they were. We're gonna talk about that, the workload that they put into you. And so you go there, and it's. I mean, to be fair, I'll say it for you, so you don't have to. It's a mismatch.
Right.
You were playing at the pro level, and guys weren't ready. So at 1989, because you graduated as a young 18, right?
That was April, so it's probably relatively normal, I guess.
Okay. At 19 years old, you're in double A ball.
Right.
Now, comparing that to the big leagues, it's not the big leagues, but for people who don't play or have played at the pro level, I think that was where the real jump is, from A ball to double A, because you see a lot of younger guys at the A level. At double A, you start seeing guys who are 24, 25, and they're men. They're grown men, real strength, more disciplined at the plate. You're 19. You had to be the youngest player in double A, if not top 5. I mean,
yeah. And I started that year at A-ball, played half of the year, and then got called up to Greenville. So I only pitched half a season in AA, but definitely more of a challenge for me. I struggled a little bit more, and then first pro season, I mean, you pitch in spring training, you go, pitch in Durham. Like I said, they weren't holding me back on innings. So, it was a stretch for what a 19-year-old was ready to do by the end of the AA season for sure.
Yeah, for sure. You end up being listed as the Braves' top prospect that year. And I think sometimes, we see that we see so many numbers today. The top 10 prospects, the top prospect, being the top prospect in an organization is a big deal. The next year, Major League Baseball agrees with them. They said you're the Major League Baseball's top prospect at 20 years old, and you reach the big leagues at 20,
Yep.
which is ridiculous. So, I mean, you can't even have a celebratory beer, after your games, and you're playing with. I remember one time a guy said to me, and I want to see if you felt this way, because maybe you didn't. Maybe I think everybody that signs pro, that goes to play pro ball, we kind of want the path that you had.
Yeah.
We want a quick path. Let's get me to the big leagues and let's see if this thing will work or not, right?
Hey.
And it's just not realistic. It's hard. It's a hard game.
Yeah.
And so I remember in '95, I was sharing this story the other day. I'm over in minor league camp, and every now and then they'll bring some minor league guys for spring training games.
Right.
Because maybe the innings aren't working out and they may need a couple extra arms. And so that was an exciting time because you'd get there and you'd have your big league uniform and you're like, yeah, man, I'm going over there. So you'd get dressed and go over there. In '95, the first time it ever happened for me, I go over with the Mets and I get in the locker room and I'm lacing up my spikes and I look across and it's Eddie Murray. I'm like, it's Eddie Murray, man. I had his baseball card when I was 7.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's still doing it. And I remember somebody said the hard part wasn't getting there, the hard part is staying there.
Yeah.
And because there's a little bit of a factor of looking at guys like Eddie Murray and Andres Galarraga, whoever might have been that guy. Did you have any of that? Did you have any shock to you?
Well, Murph was there when I got there. He was probably the biggest name, but being in American League City, I didn't really pay attention National League. Once I signed there, I was happy because Atlanta was one of the few teams that played all their games on TV. I know my parents were happy about it, getting to see all the games. So that was a cool thing for me. And then obviously when I got drafted, I started paying more attention to minor leagues and following. And obviously Murph was the biggest name there. But for the most part, they were struggling. I mean, when I got called up, Glavine and Smoltz had just gotten called up the year or two before. Pretty much the whole roster was young. So there wasn't even much hazing for me in 1990. Usually you dress the rookies up. I mean, we were so young that they weren't even doing that with the rookies because basically the whole team was young. And then in '91 is when we took the next step and added a bunch of veterans and kind of, made a little bit of a move.
Yeah, so you talk about the people you could say Dale Murphy, obviously, who was MVP twice in the early '80s. What kind of teammate was he? Do you remember? How long was he there while you were there?
He was probably only there for maybe 2 months. So I came up. Russ Nixon was the manager. Bruce Delcant was a pitching coach. I think that they lasted like 3 weeks, and then Bobby Cox took over with Leo maybe like a month into my rookie season. And then they traded Murph later that year. So he wasn't around that long. Bobby, he was the GM that drafted me. So, that kind of played a role in me sticking around too. I mean, I think he really wanted me up there. I went 3-11 my rookie year. And years later, he ended up telling me that, John Sherrills wanted to send me down in '91 to start the year. And him and Leo fought for me to stay in the big leagues. And that ended up working out. I won 18 games my second year. So the confidence that they showed in me as a young kid, I think had a little bit to do with Bobby being the GM and kind of having, some input into what's going on with that.
That's awesome, man. You mentioned '91. You join. At this point, it's Tom Glavine, who's when you first got in the big leagues at 20. Tom Glavitt's 24, Schmaltz is 23, Pete Smith is 24, and they're calling you guys the young guns.
Yeah.
You know, this hype of this electric stuff. Did any of that? I mean, did that have any impact? Were you overwhelmed that first year at all with any of that?
I don't know about overwhelmed. I think you know, obviously it's a adjustment. Our team wasn't very good, so you knew you weren't getting a lot of runs. We didn't have a very good defense. We had a ton of young talent. I mean, besides the guys you name, I mean, we had Kent Merker, Mark Wohlers, Mike Stanton. I mean, so our whole staff was young. You know, solid arms, a lot of talent. It was just a matter of getting some experience, and they really improved the defense a lot. You know, not just the offense with Terry Pendleton and Bream, Belliard. They brought all those guys in and just really showed up the defense and helped us pitch it a lot.
You mentioned you guys weren't very good. As a matter of fact, I looked and through up to that time through '86, the Braves hadn't won over 70 games.
Yeah.
So they were kind of a beating stick for a few years.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then in '93 it changes. That or 91. I'm sorry.
Right.
You go worst to first.
Yeah.
And you actually had, so you win 18 games. You got a 3.38, which is incredible. And you get sixth on the Cy Young listing. And here you're just turning 21. You're 21, man, and you're sixth on the Cy Young. It's crazy. But there were some big numbers, and Tom Glavine ended up winning it that year.
Oh yeah, yeah. He had an awesome year. Smoltz started very slow, but I think he went like 10-2 or 12-2 the second half. So, I mean, we were loaded going into the playoffs on the mound, and you know, we didn't quite have our offense set yet. You know, next couple of years we added a bunch of young guys that really took off, and added McGriff, and you know, that really shored up the team and let us win a World Series. But in '91, I mean, we were, you know, 1-0. Jack Morris was one of my childhood idols. Him and Kirk Gibson, growing up in Detroit. I mean, I was a huge fan.
Yeah.
And then he turns around and throws a 10-inning complete game against us to win 1-0 in Game 7. I mean, that's got to be the best game ever pitched in the big leagues. I mean, I know there's been perfect games, but to win a 1-0 game and pitch all 10 innings in the World Series Game 7, how can you beat that? I mean, it's amazing to me.
Yeah, I believe it or not, in this pandemic that we're in, I don't even know why. I've been watching a lot of YouTube. I watched that whole game the other day.
Yeah, it was.
I watched the whole game.
I mean, we had the bases loaded, nobody out, could score.
Right.
I mean, you know, Lonnie got lost on the bases one time, just the fluke thing with the roof. And I mean, they had chances too, but I think we definitely had our chances to win. And it's funny because, you know, we went to 4 World Series. People are, why didn't you win more? I mean, well, we went to Game 7, lost 1-0. I mean, if we win that one, you know, we ended up winning in '95. I mean, we were up 2-0 in New York, and we had a chance to win, you know, at least 3 of them. The only one we really weren't in too much was '92, and you know, that was mostly from just having to grind it out so much all through the year.
I saw I had Mackie Sasser on a couple weeks ago, and apparently he's pretty good friends with Mark Lemke.
Yeah.
And I think Mark has agreed at some point to do this. There was a play in that game that I actually want to talk to him about. I think to the common fan, it doesn't look like that it's that big a deal. It's late in the game, and I forgot who they brought in for relief, but if I'm not mistaken, the bases might have been loaded.
Yeah.
With 1 out, and you guys turn a double play, like in the 8th inning.
Right.
And it's Lemke has to go to his right quite a ways.
Yeah.
And turn, and he gives a perfect feed. It looks common to everybody else. I know that's not an easy play, the way he has to get his body, but he gave it to Belliard, who back then, you know, you can't take guys out now, but back then that guy was coming for blood, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Now it's totally different.
We've softened up, and you know, Belliard clears. He's way out of the way, and I mean, it was great, man. It was a heck of a team.
Yeah. Lummer is probably the quickest I've ever seen it turn double plays too, just as second baseman. Like you said, tough. Never flinched. I mean, just bang, turned it, and he had great playoff runs too. I mean, just
yeah, he did
put up awesome numbers for someone that you don't expect offense out of. he was pretty much one of our MVPs all the way through our run.
He looks like one of those guys. If you watch him do everything, you'd say this. He doesn't necessarily look like big league material. And that's not a shot at him in any ways, but he was a great big leaguer.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Great big leaguer.
Elliot's the same thing. I mean, just tiny. Didn't really have a lot of pop, but we didn't need that all the time. We needed guys that made all the plays, and
yeah,
to have those two up the middle, and then Otis and Dion in center. I mean, we were set. If they're hitting the balls up the middle, they're going to be outs, and that's huge for us.
Otis can run a little bit, can he?
Him and Dion were amazing to watch. I mean, we had them 1-2 for a couple of years, and it was just like a ball in the gap or something. You're just amazed how quick they got around the bases.
Oh, I forgot about Dion playing. When he was one spring training, I saw him, and I think at this point he was with the Reds maybe. There's phenomenal athletes that you see along the way. I saw Dion hit a ball in right center, and this is during a spring training game. And from home to first, of course, he was fast. And at some point after he took his turn, he decided that he was going 3.
Oh yeah.
And it's the fastest human I've ever seen.
Yeah.
From first to third, when he made his mind up that he was going, I said, that looked fake. It looked like animation.
Yeah. So my Dion story is we used to instead of running sprints all the time as pitchers, we go last group, we go run in the outfield.
Yeah.
And Leo would throw us baseballs like patterns for football.
Right.
So we signed Dion. We're running our patterns, and he would come over and he would get in front of you and defend you. So I mean, I was fast. I felt like I'm 6'4". I could fly. I feel like so he gets in front of me, kind of pushes me in the chest. I'm like, whoa, I couldn't get off the line, and I feel like I'm flying, and he's just jogging right next to me, like And Leo throws a pass, he picks it out, goes the other way, and I'm like, all right, now I get it. I mean, and we used to make fun of him because he didn't get a lot of interceptions, and he's like, Abe, look at the stats. I get thrown at like 10 times a year. I mean, it was amazing that offense coordinators wouldn't even throw a ball toward him. I mean, that's how good he was.
I remember that, man. Yeah, he didn't have to defend many passes.
No, not at all.
You go in 91. Probably the most impressive thing is something that you mentioned a while ago, which is you're the MVP of the NLCS. So right before going to the World Series, you throw 16 2/3 shutout baseball. So you shut out the Pirates twice. And this is a Pirates with Bonilla, Barry Bonds, Van Slyke. Who was the other B? Didn't they have another B there that was a terror?
Yeah, it was Bouchel, their third base.
Bouchel.
Yeah.
And so we say, Bonds, we didn't recognize him yet as what he was ended up going to be with the Giants, but he was still real. I mean, he was a guy that could take 40 bags on you. Like you said, you didn't want to put him on base.
Right.
When you're that age, so 91, you're 21, you're going through the NLCS to get to the World Series. You throw 2 shutout games. You win the MVP. Do you think at your age in that contest, it's obvious you had great stuff. Do you think you knew how to pitch, or was it just the stuff at that point?
It's tough. I mean, it was probably a little bit of both. I mean, I did use all of my pitches, even as a young kid. My dad was a pitcher in the minor league, so felt like I got good education early on how to set hitters up and work, and then having Glavine and Smoltz there with me for those years, and then adding Max later. I mean, I had a lot of good mentors with Leo. I mean, I felt like I learned to pitch pretty quickly, but it was probably more 75% stuff than anything.
Yeah, I didn't know your dad was a minor leaguer. So how obviously he had to be through the roof when you became a pro athlete as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. Left-hand pitcher. Went to Michigan State and pitched a couple of just like 3 years in the minor leagues, but I think he was 15-3 and had to quit because he asked for a raise, and the Tigers wouldn't give it to him, so he went back and taught school. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. So I'm always interested to hear. So he had a perspective of what the game was. Did he push you a lot as a kid, or did he let you just
No, he was a high school teacher and coach, so he was honestly gone a lot, coaching his teams and stuff. And then I, went through Little League or whatever, got into, Legion ball in high school. So I think when I got to high school, he stopped coaching, and that's when he started coming around and working with me more. As far as, I mean, he always worked with me, but he was always busy with other stuff. So once he got done with that, then he really focused a little bit more on me, and used to make my brothers catch me out in the front yard, and that was always an adventure. Well, it was fun until I got to about 16, and then they didn't really care for it too much anymore.
And your brothers, did they play sports?
Yeah, one of them played in college. The other one went in the Army, and he was going to play some football in college when he came back, but ended up injuring his shoulder and couldn't play.
Okay. So the whole Avery clan was pretty athletic.
Yeah, for the most part, definitely.
Yeah.
My sister played some volleyball, so yeah, definitely all into sports.
The 92 you progress, 93 you make the All-Star team. Did you pitch in that game at all?
Yeah, I think I might have got the loss. That's a long time ago, but I think we had a couple mistakes in the field, and I ended up giving a couple runs. I'm not sure, but it's still a great experience to go there and just be a part of it.
Yeah, I think that's more of I mean, that's something you'll never forget, right? I mean, probably the whole week, whole weekend anyway. But
yeah, for sure.
During this time, so 93 was a tough year, only because at the time you talk about getting hurt. You get hurt in September. At the time, you're 18-6 with a 2.9 ERA.
Yeah.
So every year it's getting to the point where like this guy's getting better and better and better. And then what did you hurt? Something under your arm?
Well, I think that might have been 90. I think that might have been in 94. 93, I was healthy all the way through. 94, we had I thought we got locked out, but I guess we were on strike in the end of the year. So, that one, I think I was banged up a little bit. Mostly my injuries really started in, I believe in 95, like after the strike came back. I pulled, something in my hip. It took me about a month and a half. I tried to pitch with it, and had a hard time coming back. It just took me forever to come back. And, from there, it was just different things. I pulled a lot of obliques. And then my shoulder, was really what did me in. If I had to change one thing, I probably would have just shut myself down a little earlier with my shoulder and got it fixed. But back then it was, kind of just, all right, we'll do what we can to get you back on the field and keep pitching with it. And we'll worry about it next year. So just kept it.
Yeah, unfortunately, and I guess, I don't know if we know it or not when we go in. I've told people this about, it's not just baseball, it's football and basketball and hockey. Professional sports is the business of winning.
Oh, yeah.
And it's usually about winning now. And not that, I don't think that they don't care about, they don't have I think they have humanity and they don't want people hurt. But you're a value to the Braves when they have you on the mound, right? I mean, that's what they want.
Yeah.
So as soon as they can get you out there, throw him out there.
Yeah, and it's different now. I mean, they're not going to do it to somebody now, but back then it was just kind of the way it was. I mean, we were supposed to be, tough enough to pitch or anything, and for the most part we were. I mean, I felt like if I went on the mound, I should do, what it takes to win the game, whether I'm 100% or 50%. So I felt like if I took the ball, that was my job that night. Unfortunately, I wasn't 100% for, pretty much after my first 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, man. I tell you, it was. It's funny, man, because I'm as a player, I'm there, but I'm still probably like you. I was always before, during, and after a big fan, and I think what most people, I went and read some articles where, after you got hurt, you never quite got back to, your form. I don't remember that about you. It's funny because what I remembered as a fan was, man, the really good stuff. I remember, that part of, and that, I think that says something. I think you had impact. I remember the shutouts. I remember watching the shutouts and going, damn, man, I mean, this guy's good. And so I think that's a credit to what you did in the early 90s, man.
I appreciate that, obviously. And for me, I probably remember the injured times a little bit more, just, struggles. And that's kind of what's been cool about this quarantine is going back and watching that. I've mentioned a couple times, I didn't realize I pitched that well in my first couple of years. I kind of do remember more so Boston and Cincinnati and Detroit where I wasn't myself, and when I watch tape, I don't even recognize the way I threw. I mean, I changed that much just from trying to protect myself. And, that's kind of what takes the fun out of the game, I think, is when you're just not able to go out there and really let it go like you're supposed to.
Yeah, when you talk about changing, I think that, and maybe some people would argue this. I thought that you had a pretty unique delivery, and that when you would bring your leg up, the hands would go very high behind you, and most guys would kind of tuck them. You go high. Was there a reason for that, or was that just comfort?
Well, honestly, when I first started 91, 92, 93, it wasn't that high, and then it gradually went up higher. I don't know why, but it was just something I got in the habit of doing. And like I said, my last 3 or 4 years, I didn't recognize the way I threw. So I think a lot of it was just mentally trying to work my way and not feel that, that pain. And that'll change the mechanics. I just did different things. I short armed the ball a little bit more, obviously lost velocity. But you're going to do what you can. When you feel that bite, you're going to do whatever you can not to feel it. So
yeah.
I just gradually got out of what was natural to me. But if you watch me in 90, probably 90 to 94, I really didn't have that high hand raise. And that's something I developed later in my career.
So when you were throwing well, you didn't have that as high, right?
No, it kind of came up to about my shoulder height. And,
okay.
And the funny thing is now that I've been retired, I mean, I wish I would have been able to help myself a little bit. I mean, I've been teaching kids for the last 16, 17 years. So you really find out that you learn a lot just by coaching kids and breaking down mechanics and really trying to help them.
Yeah.
I think if I would have been able to look at myself on tape and really say, okay, this isn't what I'm not supposed to be doing what I'm doing here, and getting myself into better positions and flying open too early. Later in my career, I did all that stuff to protect. I just wish I would have known more about pitching to be able to help myself, in the middle or end of my career.
Man, that's interesting. In 95, you guys, you had Maddox in 94 or 95?
He came over in 93.
93?
Yeah.
And so 93, you're at a World Series. 94, there is no World Series, right?
Right.
And then 95, you guys win it all.
Yeah.
So adding Greg Maddox to already, what was an incredible staff at that point, regardless of what numbers were, when I look at you, Maddox, Glavine, Schmaltz, and fill in the blank, and your guys there, I think it was Merker. Was it Merker?
Yeah, Merker, Pete Smith. After me it was Nagel and Millwood. I mean, there was
all good pitchers.
Abundance of riches there, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Is there a better rotation ever? I mean, I would argue that there's no way.
I mean, for a couple of years there, it would be tough. I mean, we made all of our starts. I think a couple of years straight, we didn't miss a start. When we added Maddox, I mean, he's just next level. I mean, people always say, well, he never threw hard. His stuff wasn't that good. You've never watched the game too much if you really believe that. I mean,
right.
Nobody's ever made a ball move the way he moves it. And he was still throwing 90, 91. I mean, maybe later in his career, he obviously dropped off a little bit, but his stuff was ridiculous. And he was the smartest pitcher to ever pitch. So, that's a pretty tough combination to beat. And today, I think he would strike out 300 guys. I think he'd even be better today than he was back then. People don't believe that because he doesn't throw hard, but he would embarrass guys by, either jamming them with his cutter or making them look ridiculous with his changeup.
Do you have a Greg Maddox story that sticks out? Is there something you can you share one with us?
I wish I could. Those are all, Greg was a little more PG-13, I guess you go out
Yeah.
past that, but well,
He liked to have fun.
I do have one. I do have one. I can
All
tell
right.
you. It wasn't bad. So we're all golfing, Glavin, Smoltz, Maddox, and myself. Really competitive all the time. So we uh, something happened on the green, and he got pissed and threw his club, and it hit my cart. And I didn't really see it because I was doing something off on the side. So we go up to the next tee box, and you're on the tee box, and I got my driver, and I'm kind of leaning on it a little bit, just not putting a lot of pressure on it, but you just kind of put it on the ground and lean on it, and it snaps in half. And then he started laughing, and they were all laughing. I'm like, man, I don't know what happened. I wasn't even leaning that hard. So we go back to the cart. I mean, I got no driver the rest of the round. Hit my 3-wood. So like 3 years later, he said, "Hey, remember when you broke your driver? Yeah, I hit that with my golf club in the cart. I just never told you." So that was just the kind of person he was. I mean,
Yeah.
he didn't really care about a whole lot. Just had fun, and he was a great teammate. I mean, you're not finding a better guy to pitch a getaway day than he would do for you. We would get out of there in probably an hour and a half. So we always appreciate that about him too.
Yeah. You can pick a good spot for dinner with that guy. Things
Sure.
are still open.
Yeah.
He So I know I've heard that he likes to have fun, and you can watch things where he's pranking people on YouTube. And then you have Glavin and Schmaltz. Same personalities or different personalities?
Totally different. Smoltzy was, carefree, like always joking. Like I said, they're all super competitive.
Yeah,
Glavin was a little more, even keeled, but still fun to be around. I mean, I don't mean that any disrespect to him, but
yeah,
Mad Dog and Smoltzy were a little more outgoing, a little more talkative, and then Glav was kind of just always a little more stoic and more about his business.
I think I've had a debate before where somebody's talking about Glavin. They said, it's kind of a silly argument, but somebody said Glavin, oh, he's as good as he is because they gave him 6 inches. And I said, no, man, I think it's because he demanded the 6 inches. I mean, he ended up getting the umpires to start giving him that because he could put it in the same spot over and over.
And I've like I said, but by watching these older games, I realized that all that talk about the bigger strike zone back then is completely wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
because we threw balls waist high down the middle that weren't strikes. Now they're strikes. I mean, I threw a ton of breaking balls that now would be strikes. And, back then, a breaking ball that maybe finished thigh high, they weren't calling it for you. So, if we did get a couple inches off the plate, that was just to make up for stuff we didn't get on the plate.
Yeah, I don't know if you. I think in this Facebook group, McDowell actually the other day he posted something of him where he threw a pitch in '93. It had to be at the belt.
Oh yeah.
They called it a ball. I mean, and now you'd say that's not even close. That's a strike every day.
Yep. And that was probably 5 or 6 pitches a game that we'd say, man, that'd be a strike now for sure.
Yeah. You played with guys, man. By the way, you talk about the crime dog, Fred McGriff. I was 19 in spring training with the Padres, and Fred McGriff was there. And I was staying back. I was a third baseman still, and I'm hitting off a tee after work. It was beautiful weather. I didn't want to go in. I wanted to swing some more. So I grabbed a bunch of balls and went to the tee, and I didn't think anybody was around. And somebody comes over and says, "Hey, man, can I mix in with you?" And it's Fred McGriff.
Yeah.
So I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And so I'm feeding him, on the tee. And it was the first time, man, I was really watching, everything, how he would load up, and he had that, finish high.
Yeah, helicopter.
It was the first time I'd ever seen the ball come off a tee where the tee doesn't move and it sounds like thunder's clapping, man. I was like, this guy's different.
Oh yeah, and he's a great guy too. I mean, just class act. Kind of quiet, but just make you laugh. And as soon as we added him in '93, I mean, we took off. We were, I think we were like 9 or 10 games behind the Giants. They ended up winning 103 games, and we won 104 to beat them. And we're not doing that without him for sure. I mean, he totally changed our offense, and you throw him in the middle of, while Chipper I think wasn't there yet. I think we had Klesko. Andrew wasn't there yet, but we were still. He kind of finished off our lineup a little bit with David Justice and Hamilton. So he was a huge add-on for us.
By the way, when Sid Bream, the classic clip of Sid Bream scoring the winning run.
Yeah.
Did anybody tell him that he looked like the slowest person in the world running around third?
I didn't mind that, but his slide was pretty bad. I mean, he stood right in the middle of the play.
Yeah.
You teach him slide way over to the right and touch the base with your hand. But I mean, he made it. And that's kind of all that matters, I guess.
Yeah, it looked. And again, this is, of course, he's a great player too. You can watch the replay of it and know what's going to happen, and I still think they're going to throw him out in the replay. He's going that slow, man.
Oh, absolutely. But he ran just fast enough.
Yeah, he did. He ran just perfect, man.
I would tell people we look so stupid because we were already out of the dugout. I mean, we thought we were scoring easy, and basically almost a home plate already by the time he got there and jumped on him. But that was still the most exciting game I've ever been a part of. I mean, I know winning the World Series and everything was a different kind of feeling. But as far as like us thinking we're done and then just totally turning around and winning that game, I mean, that was a game I'll never forget for sure.
Chipper Jones, man. This is a stupid question. I don't know how else to say it. Real deal, right? I mean,
yeah, he when he first got called up, wasn't a real big kid. I mean, he was tall, but kind of skinny. But man, as soon as you heard the ball come off his bat, you were like, "Oh man, this kid's crazy." So I want to say he came up in the end of '93, and then I can't remember. I think he came up for like a game or two, and then he got hurt all '94, and then came back in '95. So he was ready to be up there in '93, but blew his knee out in '94, and obviously we missed it with the strike anyway. So didn't really hurt us too bad. But having him as a full-time player in '95, like I said, that just changes your lineup. You got a guy that you can't pitch around because he hits both ways. And he was 300 from both sides. I mean, it wasn't like you said, all right, we got to turn him around and we'll have an advantage on him right-handed. I mean, he was legit from either side, so there was no getting around him.
I sent him a tweet the other day, somewhat trying to get him on here. He and I were drafted same year, and as a matter of fact, the Braves scout in the Houston area in '90 was. Are you familiar with Red Murph?
Not really, no.
So Red Murph, he was an older guy. He'd been around a long time.
Right.
And he signed Nolan Ryan. That's kind of his big claim to fame, that he was the scout that signed Nolan Ryan.
Yeah.
And he was a great guy, very, very sweet man. And the reason that I knew that he signed Nolan Ryan was because every time you spoke to Red Murph, he would tell you he's the guy that signed Nolan Ryan.
I would brag about that too.
Yeah. But he was the one of every scout that had looked at me. Red Murph was the most aggressive. He was coming to my high school practices. He was really checking me out. And so I do remember the night before the draft, Red Murph calls me and he says, "Hey, look, I think this is how it's going to go down." He says, "We're going to go for this shortstop," because obviously people know Chipper came up with shortstop.
Right.
"We're going for this kid named Jones." He said something, I don't know if they didn't have a second pick or whatever. He said, "But we're going to try to get you in the third, Craig."
Yeah.
And we get you in the third. Are you willing to sign? I'm like, yes. And so just imagine if you guys could have got me in the third, how good we could have been, man.
Would have been a steal.
We would have been a steal. But anyways, I played against Chipper Jones. We were both in the South Atlantic League in '91.
Yeah.
And you probably don't know how it is because you're on the other end of this. Anybody who's not the first rounder, we all check out the first rounder like, oh, we're gonna see what this guy's all about, right? Let's see if he's real. And it just so happened that we played the Braves in the last series of each half in that year. So at the end of the first half, you get a stat sheet, and Chipper's hitting 231. He had 6 home runs, nothing electric. Now you could see that he looked different.
Right.
He had a walk about him that said, "I'm pretty good," and it was believable. And then at the end of the year, he was hitting right under 300, 16, 17 bombs. He got like 65 RBIs in the second half. He looked like he looked like a really good first round pick in the first half, and he looked like a big leaguer in the second.
Right. Yeah.
And so you could see that he was destined for the fact that he's he's a Hall of Famer. I'm not surprised at all.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
How about him? You got any Chipper Jones? He got a little funny too, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's good too, man. He, same thing on the golf course. Had a good time with him. Played a lot of cards, but he wasn't a big jokester. He didn't do a lot. No, he didn't do a lot of pranks, or I probably pranked him more than he pranked us. But like you said, he knew he was a big leaguer pretty young age. So by the time he got up there, we had started dressing up guys a little bit. So.
Yeah.
I don't know if he really appreciated us taking his clothes and dressing him up. I think he was one of the guys that put a little fight into it.
That makes it better, though, doesn't it, when they fight back?
Absolutely.
The best golfer on the team, who was it?
Smoltz. Yeah, he was the best, but we were all really good because we played so much, and we played every day. We didn't pitch, so if you got Maddox in Vegas, he was solid. Glav, I think, is actually better now than he was when he played. And then, I used to be good, but I don't really golf much anymore.
So, was there a guy on the Braves that ever played golf with you guys that shouldn't play golf?
Man. Well, Chipper wasn't very good. But no, for the most part, I mean, everyone was pretty good. And Chipper's good now, but, hitters always had a hard time because they had that baseball swing in there, too.
Yeah.
Just try to hit as far as they could. So we'd take advantage of those guys a little bit.
Man, I suck at golf, man, and it's a game that I would think, I'm a pretty good athlete. I could play I was good at football or basketball, and when I say I can't get out of the 90s, and it drives me bananas. And I don't play enough to have the right to say that, but it's something that it's a maddening game for me. I love playing it, but I suck at it.
Yeah.
So we'll get into some subjective questions here. Best athlete that you've played with or against that you saw and you said, man, this guy's, there's a ton of them, but who sticks out more than any other?
It'd be hard to beat Dion.
Yeah.
And Bo Jackson was right there too. But Dion was ridiculous. You do what you do, he was that good at football, and I think he could have been, even better at baseball if he really focused on it more, but
yeah,
that'd be one of the best corners of all time. So that would be hard to beat him as far as an athlete. And Smoltz was surprisingly, great at golf. Basketball, he didn't look like a basketball player, but you put him on the court, he was legit. 100%.
Smoltz can hoop.
Oh yeah, great shooter,
Wow.
dribbler, a lot quicker than he looks.
Yeah.
He was tough.
So whenever I ask a pitcher this, most of them, guys who have faced real big leaguers, all-stars, Hall of Famers, they can usually pick a name pretty fast when I ask them this. What guy just seemed to have your number?
Glenn Bragg.
Glenn Bragg.
I told him this on Facebook the other day. I got called up at 90, and I faced Cincinnati right away. He was with Cincinnati, and just killed everything I threw the plate. He killed. So for probably 5 years, couldn't get him out. Just wore me out. There was some probably bigger names that had success on me too, but he was the guy that stuck out to me. That just somebody that doesn't make sense why he kills you, but he just did everything I threw.
Just did. Yeah. And what about the other end? What was a big name that you remember that you just seemed to, no matter what, you just seemed to get the better of him?
Well, early in my career was Bonds. He was a lefty. I didn't really have a whole lot of trouble with lefties, so he probably hit 200 with maybe a home run off me in my first 6 years, and then later in my career when I was terrible, he got a couple more off me probably, but he's probably the biggest name that I didn't really have much trouble with.
Yeah, that's a big name.
Yeah, Strawberry. I did pretty well against all the lefties. Strawberry was, a huge name when I first came up, and never really had a lot of trouble with him either.
And if people that don't know, I remember when I was a hitter, we might be facing a lefty, and I was a right-handed hitter. I didn't care, but left-handed hitters, you would think that it was the end of the world if a lefty was on the mound, man. They're like, oh, this is, I don't want to do it. And then especially if you got a big hammer, so, big curveball. But We also probably remember the furthest, as a pitcher, the furthest home run you can remember giving up. You remember who hit it?
Wow, man, there was plenty of those. That'd be tough to pick one, but there was quite a few. And the funny thing about Dion was I would give one up, and then I'd come back in the dugout, and I'd be all pissed off, and he would sit next to me. He said, "Hey, Ave, you know, you're going to go to the hospital after the game, visit that guy from the upper deck." He said that ball hit him so hard, I can't believe he thought he was safe up there. So it just, you know, and that's how our team was. I mean, just relaxed. I mean, and he was a great teammate as far as, like, you know, knowing what to say to me and get my mind off something bad that maybe happened.
I saw you make a comment the other day. So you played the majority of your career, at least the biggest years, with Bobby Cox, who you referenced earlier, and then Leo, the pitching coach.
Yeah.
And I think most everybody who's a fan of yours or a fan of the Braves or even Major League Baseball, you know, we know Leo as, you know, the rocking, and it looks like he's a nervous wreck, but that's just him in his element.
Right.
I saw you say the other day to somebody, I guess who'd sent you something, that if you saw him stop rocking, that's when you needed to worry.
Yeah.
Was he a pretty intense guy?
Yeah, he was intense, but you know, the thing I always say about Leo is he's just 100% on your team. I mean, if he liked you, I mean, he would fight the media, he'd fight the front office. I mean, he would fight umpires. He didn't care. He was your biggest supporter, and I think maybe you might have saw on Facebook. I put a picture of him yelling in my face on the mound.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
You know, I said, well, you know, I told everyone that he was saying that he really loved me.
Yeah.
You know, we had a lot of, you know, altercations, not anything serious, but just, you know, I was pretty vocal, he was vocal, so we would clash sometimes, but it made us even closer probably because we really understood each other. And he was great about knowing what I needed to do on the mound and whether I needed a kick in the butt or needed to be settled down a little bit. He knew what to say to me.
And what kind of manager was Bobby Cox? Was he a player's manager?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he was the kind of guy that got to know you. I mean, come and talk to you in the outfield. But you knew he was in charge. I mean, if you did something wrong, he'd chew you out.
Yeah.
But the best part was he didn't hold anything, you know, no grudges. I mean, if he yelled at you later that night, he's buying you a beer. So
Yeah.
there was no carryover to it. Just a great person and a great manager. I mean, I wouldn't have wanted to spend the majority of my career with anyone other than those two.
Awesome. When you went to other teams, what were the other teams? Who else did you play for?
Boston, Cincinnati, and Detroit.
When you went to those teams, they were short stints. Do you feel like it was difficult to adapt to were there different cultures?
A little bit. I mean, Boston was more, you know, kind of a big city, and I had a couple young kids, so that was a little more difficult. I really liked Cincinnati. We had a great team. You know, probably the most fun I had playing as far as like hanging out with the guys and just really kind of relaxed. I mean, we won 97 games, tied with the Mets for the wild card, and then lost in the wild card game, 1-game playoffs. So, you know, I don't think that was expected of us, and just an unbelievable run for that team. And then pitching in Detroit was cool because it was my hometown team. So I had actually taken I had shoulder surgery in Cincinnati, took a couple years off, and then tried to make a comeback in 2003. And, you know, ended up getting called up for a couple months, but it just wasn't the same stuff that I was used to.
Just a couple more questions, Steve. Is the game today, is it, you know, the commissioner that we have today, a lot of changes like this year, if it happens at all, you know, there's a 3-batter minimum. There's a lot of rule changes. Do you tend to favor those, or do you tend to kind of reject them?
I don't know if I mind that one. You know, I always hated pitching changes, and so I don't know if I really don't like that one. Some of the other stuff that was proposed, maybe not as much, but you know, the game's going to change. I mean, people want more fast-paced, you know, action, get more offense probably. So, you know, being done for 17 years already, I mean, it kind of changes your perspective. I think I kind of appreciate what they're trying to do.
Mhm.
You know, some of it might not be the best, you know, the best cause, but you just kind of go with it.
I I tend to, I guess I'm kind of a baseball traditionalist. I'm always kind of like, hey, just leave it alone. I remember when they first started talking about wild card teams.
Right.
When that came up, I was against it. Oh, that's stupid. You know, we don't need wild. And now you're like, I think we should add one more. You know, one more round
Well,
because it's
those,
exciting, right?
yeah, that's the most exciting game is the one game to get into
Yeah, yeah, right.
the LCS. So I definitely appreciate the wild card round now. So yeah, I kind of actually like that part of it. Getting more teams into the playoffs. When I was there, for the most part, there was 4 teams, so we went right to the NLCS, and you know, you win one series, you're in the World Series. So that started changing in '95, I guess, was the first year of the wild card, and you know, it was a little bit of adjustment, and that best 3 out of 5 was a lot more stressful than the NLCS was to us.
I remember the only thing that I think I'd like to hear your opinion on this too. I don't like, and I get it. I get why the rules are in place. I don't want to see guys get hurt. Nobody wants that. And because I think the one thing that people don't realize is uh, pro baseball is these are big men. These aren't your average size guys. These
Right.
are bigger, faster, stronger fellas. And I tell people that somebody told me one time, well, you don't have to be big to play baseball. And I'm like, it helps, you know,
Right. Yeah.
because I mean, I remember looking at some of my team pictures, even the minors. You know, when I was playing, I'm 6'3". You know, I played around probably 215, and there would be 10, 11 guys
Yeah.
in the picture, you know, larger than me. And so I'd say, man, it's some big cats out there. But where we don't take guys, you know, you can't take the catcher out to play at the plate, or you can't break up 2 anymore. I actually liked it when you could.
Right.
I think it made it more. I don't know. I don't know what it made it more, but did you like it more then, or do you agree with the softer ruling?
Well, I think it kind of, you know, a little bit of both ways. I mean, you don't want to see somebody get hurt. You know, some of the stuff got a little out of hand
Yeah.
back in the day. Like I like running over the catcher still. You know, that's just me. At second base, the guy's not ready for it. You know, for the most part. So that one's a little tougher. I mean, and guys sliding into someone's knee that's trying to plant on the base, that makes it tough. So
Yep.
probably don't, you know, I probably would still let the guys hit the catcher, but maybe at second base, you know, protect them a little bit more.
I liked it to where, and again, some guys would, just like you said, they'd go too far. But I like the fact that if it did, then it would police itself.
Right.
You know, then the teams would take care of it.
Yeah.
And you know, if you didn't want to get policed, then you kept things, you know, respectful.
Yeah, and that's definitely changed a little bit. I don't think it's the same as it used to be.
Yeah, me too. I hope they don't change it too much, but every time they do change it, it always seems like it's okay. So 2 last questions, and this is a question that I wanted to ask Jack McDowell the other day, and I didn't, because you guys had the same agent. You had Scott Boras.
Right.
So I don't know much about Scott Boras. What I do know is that he is really good at getting every large name that's out there.
Yeah.
And so the players trust that from a business perspective, the guy's going to take care of things. Was it when you have a relationship with him? Is it a strictly business relationship, or you know, did you have a friendly relationship with Scott, or why did you choose a guy like Scott Boras?
When I was a senior, he flew from California to my house and set up a meeting with me. Wow. He had Bill Cottle was a reliever in the Blue Jays organization, but for the most part, Andy Bennis and I were his first 2 big clients. He signed us both in '88. But he said, hey, you know, I want to come talk to you. He was the only agent to approach me when I was in high school, kind of explain that he can advise us, you know, no deals or anything. But I think he was one of the first guys to really go out and you know, start recruiting high draft picks. And, you know, Andy and I kind of set him off on a good run there.
You know, I actually entertained the idea of doing that at one point, and it's not easy. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not easy at all. for him to accomplish what he had, he's putting in some real legwork, man.
And I think it's harder now. I mean, I think players expect more out of you. I mean, back when I was first signed with him, he maybe come in, once a year and buy me some dinner, but I wasn't expecting him to throw me shoes and, get me whatever I wanted. It was kind of just, okay, you're my agent. As soon as I get to the big leagues, I'll start talking to you. And, in the minor leagues, he would come by. We'd go to Ryan's Steakhouse or whatever it is and he'd buy me some dinner, but that was about it.
And by the way, people don't know, well, obviously you being a first rounder, probably your first spring training, you were being flooded with glove offers, shoes offers. Who'd you sign with gloves?
I started out with Rawlings and Nike. The Nike was cool because you got the merchandise.
Yeah.
Cash, but they gave me all these sweatsuits, these track suits that, you couldn't even wear now, but it was fun to look at pictures back then.
What about did you get, as a pitcher, would you get a batting glove deal?
I did, yeah, because we were National League, so we had hit.
Yeah.
So I think I had a Franklin contract for a while.
How many pair a year for?
I didn't get a lot. I mean, they'd throw me a box or something like that. But
oh, really?
If I needed them, I could get them. It was just, And
yeah.
The Rawlings, being Rawlings, I'd get some Rawlings bats too, so that was kind of cool.
I remember in the Padres, some of these players would get like a pair a year. They get like 160 pair of batting gloves.
Yeah.
Benito Santiago was always very charitable. He would come over and just, start throwing them out to the minor league sides. And we're all like, we look like, we could never afford a pair. We're all diving for them, anything we can do to get free stuff.
Absolutely.
It was always good, man. There were, it was funny. We talk about a brotherhood and guys taking care of each other. And that's always been good, man. I remember, you ever play against Carl Everett?
Yeah.
I didn't know him well. We were both in the Mets, and I think one time he was with his family, and it was a bunch of us minor leaguers, and we're eating and drinking excessively, and of course we're running up a bill. We all have minor league money. And then the bill comes, and it had been taken care of. And, a guy like Everett saw it, and he just waved. He didn't even know him personally, but that's how it is, right? I mean, it was cool.
It's supposed to be.
It's the way it's supposed to be, yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I appreciate you doing this. I know you don't have to, and I appreciate you spending time with me, man.
Absolutely. It's been fun.
You were fun to watch, fun to talk to, and I hope people get to enjoy it. And I thank you for doing it.
All right, Bully. I appreciate it, man.
Enjoy the weekend, Steve. I appreciate it, man.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.